Hello, Year Nines. Welcome to Lesson 2. Today we're going to move on from what we talked about last lesson, which was the nervous system and the endocrine system and the immune system. And now we're going to start talking about how balance is achieved in the body. All right, so today, by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to understand how feedback mechanisms, both negative and positive, regulate internal conditions to maintain homeostasis. And your success criteria are that by the end of this lesson, I'll be able to define homeostasis and explain its purpose, label and describe parts of a negative feedback loop, describe examples of negative feedback, explain positive feedback using examples, and compare how positive and negative feedback differ in maintaining balance in the body. So today, we're going to start with a little bit of revision from last lesson, and then we're going to move into what is homeostasis, what is a feedback mechanism, and then talk about negative feedback and positive feedback. One of the main things today is that we're going to start to think like a scientist, and we're going to start to talk like a scientist, and we're going to start using words that scientists will use, okay? And so a lot of this language we're going to be developing today and as we go forward with this topic. All right, so we are going to do a quick 2-minute power paragraph. Now, this is a self-regulation learning skill to help you with your study. So what I want you to do is I'm going to get you to pause the video. You're going to set your timer for 2 minutes, and you're going to write everything that you can remember about the nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, and the homeostasis. Anything that you can remember. All right, and this will be a good starting point for some study for you. So pause now and go for it. How did we go? So that's a really good way to do some study, is give yourself a time limit and then try and basically get out all the knowledge out of your brain, but it also helps you to know where your gaps are. So have a look at what your gaps are. You can either send me your power paragraph or you can keep it for yourself, but that will help us know how we're going from last lesson and if we need to cover anything like that. So let me know if there's anything that popped up. All right, today we're going to talk about feedback mechanisms. So basically our body needs to be in balance so that it works properly. And the way that all of the things work in our body is that we have a nice complex balance that we have. So we have 2 types of feedback that occur in our body. So there's negative feedback, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually not. Negative feedback just means that it's counteracting any changes that are occurring. And positive feedback is making sure that thing that's changed continues so that the process continues. So we're going to go through some of that, okay? All right, so a negative feedback. We're just going to play a little video here.
Consider a pressure cooker. This simple kitchen device uses both positive and negative feedback mechanisms to cook your food. Pressure cookers rely on a heating element, a cooking pot that is sealed within the device, and a pressure sensor in the lid. As the heating element kicks on, the liquid inside the pot comes to a boil. Since it is sealed inside the cooker, it starts to build up pressure. While this pressure cooks your food faster, it is also dangerous. The whole device could explode if the heat was left on the entire time. This is why a pressure cooker needs feedback mechanisms. When the pressure sensor senses low pressure, it sends one type of signal to the computer that increases the heat from the heating element. This is a form of positive feedback because it tells the heating process to continue. However, when the pressure starts to build up within the pot, the pressure sensor sends a new signal. This turns the heat off, which stops the pot from boiling and allows the pressure cooker to maintain pressure without exploding. This is negative feedback because it stops the process from continuing, which allows the pressure cooker to maintain homeostasis.
Okay, so using the pressure cooker as an example, it helps us know that either something that's changing in the body either needs to be stopped so that we can return back to our stable state and our balance, or we need something to continue on so that it continues to help our body, and that would be positive feedback. So we're going to start with negative feedback. So this is our stabilizing mechanism. So if there are any changes that are occurring in the body that's going to affect the body and not allow it to function how it should, we need something to counteract that change. And that's what a negative feedback loop does. It restores our body back to its set point. So a common example that we have is thermoregulation. So where our body either sweats to cool itself down because we're overheating, or it shivers to warm itself up because we're too cold. Now, to think back to our picture and our video last lesson of the man running, how do we not overheat? Okay. Another example is our blood glucose or blood sugar regulation, where we either have insulin being released, which helps to decrease our blood sugar levels after we've eaten lots of sugary food, or glucagon is released to help increase our blood sugar if we don't have enough. Okay, so like we said, a couple of examples here. So we've got thermoregulation, where either sweating or shivering occurs. They're both negative feedback to try and bring our temperature back, either bring it up, bring it back down. Blood glucose, so making sure that we stay at a normal level. And we also have blood pressure, because if our blood pressure is too high, we might have a stroke because we have a burst blood vessel. Or if our blood pressure is too low, we might fall over and faint. So here are the parts of a negative, our negative feedback mechanism at this point. Okay, so we have something called the stimulus, and the stimulus is what's changing in the body. Okay, what level has moved away from its normal, and this is called our stimulus. We then have our sensor. This is what is detecting that there's been a change. It detects the stimulus. Then we have a control center. So this is the part of our body, usually in the brain, that compares what is currently happening in our body to what should be normal. And then it tries to initiate a response to try and fix it. So the control center then sends a message to the effector. And this is the part of our body that responds to the change and does something to produce a response. All right, and the response is what then brings us back to our normal state. So let me give you an example. All right, so our body temperature gets too hot and we go above 37 degrees Celsius. So our nerve cells in our skin and in our brain, they start to sense, so this is our sensor, detects that we're getting too hot and this is not good. It sends a message up to our control center in the brain. So we have a temperature regulatory center in the brain that goes, oh no, we're getting too hot, we need to cool ourselves down, otherwise this is going to be bad news. So our brain then sends a message through to our effectors, which are our sweat glands, throughout our body, and it tells them to start sweating. So the response that we have is that our body temperature decreases because we've sweated and we've cooled down. Then that message goes back up to the nerve cells and the skin and brain. That's our negative feedback loop. Goes back and go, okay, we're good now. We're back to normal. And the brain then goes, okay, we're good. We need to stop sweating now. Because if we kept sweating, we get too cold. Okay. So we have a stimulus, which is the increased body temperature. The nerve cells in the skin and the brain are our sensor, the part that senses this change. Sends a message up to our control center, which compares this really high body temperature to what should be normal and goes, we need to cool down. Sends a message to our sweat glands to turn on and start to sweat. Our body temperature decreases back down to normal and the sweating stops. And that's called a negative feedback because it doesn't just keep going and going. Okay, let's try one of our own. So now this time we are too cold. So our body temperature drops below 37 degrees and we start to feel really cold. So our stimulus is body temperature is decreasing. Our sensor will be, again, those nerve cells in our skin and in our brain going, uh-oh, we're getting too cold. We need to do something quickly. And so a message goes to the brain, the thermoregulatory center in the brain, that says we need to start warming up now because we're getting too cold. Sends a message to our effector, which is our muscles, and we start to shiver. And the shivering, it's using our muscles and it starts to develop some heat. And so our body temperature, the response, starts to come back up. And once it goes back to the sensor, and once it gets to 37 degrees and it's back to normal, the sensors go, okay, we're happy now. And it tells the brain to stop that response. And we have that negative feedback loop. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to go and click on this link into our Google Classroom, and there will be a worksheet in there for you to develop your own negative feedback loop. So I want you to do a little bit of your research, or your own research, and find a negative feedback mechanism loop in the body and work out what the stimulus is. So what is the change that's occurring in the body? What's the sensor that detects this change? What is the control center that goes, we need to do something about this? What's the effector that is going to respond to the change and allow a response to occur? And what is the response? So I want you to pause the video here and take about 10 minutes and see if you can fill out your own worksheet, and then come back and join me for the rest of the lesson. All right, I hope that you did well there. So I will have a look at those and see how you've gone, and I'll give you some feedback. So now I just want to focus on a positive feedback mechanism. So we talked about a negative feedback mechanism is where we're recognizing that there's a change in the body that's not normal and it's not good for the body. A bit like that pressure cooker, it's going to explode if it keeps going that way. So we need something to stop it and to counteract it. On the other hand, we have some things that occur in our body that we want to keep going because it's good for the body. So for example, when we're bleeding and we need our body to start clotting to stop the bleeding, we need our body to keep sending platelets to the side of the bleed to keep making that clot until the bleeding stops. And so there's actually a message that goes, keep going, keep sending those platelets, keep going until that bleeding has stopped. And that's called a positive feedback. Another one is that when a woman is having a baby, the baby's head starts to put pressure on the cervix, the mum's cervix, which is our stimulus. A message is sent to the control center in the brain to say, we need some oxytocin to be released, which is a hormone, which then causes more intense contractions and allows baby's head to continue to press down on the cervix, resulting in the message going back to the brain going, yep, more oxytocin. And so it keeps producing more and more and more because this is a good thing and we want the labor to continue. We want the contractions to be stronger so that this baby comes out. So instead of counteracting a change in the body, we're amplifying a response that's occurring. We want whatever response is occurring, like clotting or contractions to get this baby out, we want them to intensify so that we can have a particular outcome. So instead of trying to stop something so we can get back to our equilibrium or homeostasis or balance, we're trying to accelerate an action that's going to allow us to have a good outcome, so clotting or having a baby. And these things are critical. So with bleeding, this is critical. We don't want to keep bleeding because we're going to bleed out and die. So these platelets, we need that to happen quite quickly. And same with the baby. We don't want labor to take too long because that's not good for mum or baby. So we need this oxytocin to be released, and the baby's head pushing on the cervix, that's the stimulus, and it's going to keep going until baby is out and there's no more stimulus for that feedback loop to keep going. So just a little bit of a fun little animation here. So our positive feedback's going more. We need more of what's going on in the body to continue so that we get the outcome that we want. Whereas negative feedback's going, we need to stop this. This is not good for the body. And we need to counteract those changes so that we can then get back to balance. Okay, so feedback mechanisms, either positive or negative, are essential for our body to work properly. Negative feedback is going to stop those deviations from normal, so stop too high temperatures or too low temperatures, whereas positive feedback is going to help us continue to do what we need to do, and both of these allow our body to maintain balance. All right, so this is a vital role. So homeostasis, that big word that I keep saying, this is the balance in our body so that all of the parts of our body work the way that they should. And we need both negative feedback to restore this balance by making sure that any deviations that occur are fixed really quickly, while positive feedbacks amplify any processes for those critical events such as bleeding or childbirth. And together, they allow the body to be resilient and adaptable, and they adapt to internal and external changes. So we need them to work. And if they don't work, then we have negative outcomes such as disease or illness or something like that. Okay, and we'll go on to that a little bit more as we go into the next lesson. Okay, so some homework for you to do before our next lesson is, again in our classroom, I want you to click on to this document and I want you to see what you can come up with of how each of these systems works together to keep balance. So let's have a look. We've got the one down here, regulating body temperature. We've already gone through that, and we talked about the nervous system, and we talked about how we start to sweat. So the integumentary, that's the skin. See if you can do some research and find out what each of these systems do to maintain balance. Next lesson, we're going to come back and we're going to develop our own negative feedback mechanism using some digital multimedia, and we're going to start putting everything together. So what are our body systems doing to allow our negative feedback systems to work? Okay. And again, I'll follow up with this and we'll go through this at the beginning of our next lesson and see how far you got, and we'll fill in any of the gaps that we have and that we identify. But good luck. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, and let's think about feedback mechanisms and think about what's going on in our bodies to help us to be healthy and strong and to help us do all of the things that we need to do. So I'll catch up with you next lesson. Bye.